Welcome to Come Railfan with me, Episode 4. Today we're going to set the Wayback Machine to May 21st, 2007, when I railfanned the St. Stephen Subdivision of the New Brunswick Southern Railway. Now, the New Brunswick Southern Railway is a short line that operates in New Brunswick, Canada, along with its partner railways in the state of Maine to transport goods across the former Canadian Pacific lines in eastern Canada. The New Brunswick Southern has been in operation since 2006, I think. No, that's not right. 1996. And so I chased that railway quite a bit, but this is the only time that I actually chased a train on the St. Stephen Subdivision. The St. Stephen Subdivision is a branch line that comes from Macadam, New Brunswick, down to the town of St. Stephen. And it is used to service a few industries in the town of St. Stephen itself. Ganongs is one of them. They make chocolate. Another one is the flake board company that makes particle board. And they also connect with the railway that's in Calais, Maine, which services the Woodland Mill. So it was Victoria Day, which is a holiday in Canada, and I took my youngest son, and we went on a road trip. He was always liking to get out of the house and go places, and I was always liking going to see trains, so it worked out well together. So we hit the road and headed to Macadam. Now at the time, I was living in Fredericton, New Brunswick, so here's a map to show you where we were. We lived in Fredericton. We drove down to Macadam. Now the route I show you here shows the road route between Macadam and St. Stephen, but that's not really how the train goes. If you zoom in, what you'll see is that the rail line in Macadam goes through the wilderness here, where there's no road, and then when it comes down to Lawrence Station, you can cross it here, and then Honeydale, it parallels the 750 and 755 most of the way down from there. So there's a period where you can't chase anything, but as you get closer to St. Stephen, it's close to roads most of the way. So I went to Macadam to see if the train had left yet. It was not there, so I assumed it had gone. So I hit the road down through along 630 to try to find it somewhere. And what I found was here at Moore's Mills, there was an empty siding there. One of the things I liked about that was that there's an old boxcar sitting in the siding there, which was probably being used as a tool shed because there's no way it was moving. But there was nothing there. I carried on all the way to St. Stephen, where I found the train. The train was at the flake board plant in St. Stephen, and it had its caboose with it. This train, this branch line train, often goes with a caboose because there's no place to turn the train, so they will use the caboose as a shoving platform for the conductor to ride on. So this is the first glimpse I caught of the train, and it was at this facility, which is the St. Stephen plant, flakeboard plant. So I waited there for the train to come out, and after a time, it started shoving out of the facility. So I used the long lens of my Canon S3 to take these pictures. So that Canon S3 was my first really good digital camera, a 6-megapixel camera, and it had a really good zoom on it. Like, it was not an SLR, it was an integrated camera, but it had a really good zoom, so I was able to zoom in a fair bit to see a long distance. So here's the conductor. He's on the caboose, guarding all the railway crossings. And you can see that the caboose also has lights on it, so that it can light the way as they go through crossings. So after they passed me with the NB Southern 9801 pushing on the rear, they went on to their siding farther down in St. Stephen. They were able to get there first. So you can see I tried to get to the crossing before them, but I did not. This is an MMA Montreal, Maine and Atlantic bulkhead flat car that was part of the train. The MMA, of course, no longer exists after the tragedy at Megantic, but this was one of their flat cars. And here they were doing some switching and running around the train. So they dropped the caboose in the siding. You can see the conductors there doing some assisting with the switching on the ground. So they did a little bit of switching there, and here's the conductor on the footboard. They ended up running around and doing a little bit of motion because they had to switch a warehouse in St. Stephen. So there they've got everything switched around. They got the caboose on the other end, the engine on the other end. And then they ended up shoving into this facility. So this facility here is basically just a little spur with a loading dock, and they were basically switching some boxcars in and out of that facility. Here's another view of the same thing. You can see the trains in the distance is on the main line, and they're busy switching in and out here. When they were done that, they put the train back together and carried on. See here, NB Southern 9801 was looking a little ragged, a lot of rust spots and paint missing on it. It has since been repainted and renamed to the Main Northern 9801 when the New Brunswick Southern acquired some of the assets of the former Montreal Main and Atlantic. Maybe it wasn't the Montreal Main and Atlantic, maybe it was a different railway, but they acquired some assets in Maine. That the main portion of the railway is called the Main Northern because it's a U.S. corporation, not a Canadian corporation. And 9801 was relabeled as Main Northern 9801. So here they are back at the Flakeport plant. And then they started shoving back through St. Stephen. So they were done their work in St. Stephen, and now they're on their way back out of St. Stephen, back up towards Macadam. So you can see the conductors riding the caboose. That was a long distance shot and a closer shot. He's got his hand on the radio there. One thing I want to show you as he gets closer is that right here, his hands on the air valve that controls the horn. There's a horn on the caboose itself so that he can blow the horn for the crossing. So a lot of times they'll blow the horn from the locomotive, but this caboose is equipped with its own horn so that it's closer to the crossing, probably a lot easier to hear for motorists. You can also see that they have a end of train device there for brake pressure. So that's just hanging off the caboose off the end of the air pipe. So after they went through the crossing, this is the locomotive going through the crossing. I tried to race ahead of them to the next crossing, and well, that's one more shot of the distance. So this is the same location. This is basically them around the corner. You can see the track is a little bumpy in places. I believe it's since been refurbished somewhat, but at the time it was pretty bumpy between the joints, and a fair bit of weeds along the right of way. So there's the next crossing. They're going through that. That's the nose of my former van there, the Kia Sedona, which was a kind of a piece of junk. And so the next place, they're going by a soccer field, a baseball field or something. Still shoving. And here they're still shoving up. This is near Ganongs, so they're still in town, but they're still pushing up. Now at Ganongs, they stopped and switched ends of the caboose and the locomotive, so that the locomotive would lead for the rest of the trip. Again, you can see how it's exaggerated with the telephoto lens here, but you can see how the track is not the best at that spot. I'm sure it was a bit of a jarring ride for the crew. All right, so here we are. They have left St. Stephen, and they're doing a crossing here. This is one of my favorite photos of the whole trip. And it was purely by accident, really. as I said, this was the only time I had photographed a train on this line, so I didn't know where anything was, but I saw this road crossing, figured it would intersect the track, so I drove down it, and I was lucky to see that there was a covered bridge in the distance. And in this area of New Brunswick, there are a lot of covered bridges, road covered bridges, and so I was fortunate to be able to capture one within the photograph. Now the sun wasn't really great; you can see the shadows going this way, so I tried to locate myself so that it wasn't too much in shadow. I had to do a fair amount of editing to this photo to get a decent photo, but it turned out okay. And I also took a video at this spot. I'm going to see how that works. So we'll try that. So not a super long train. A little close up. And another shot as they go through. So here's the next location. I also like this one. I like this one a lot because it's pretty well lit. Again, this is right beside the highway as I was driving back, and I saw that bridge and I said, well, that looks like a good location. So I stopped there and waited for the train to come along, and I had some time to set up video as well. So here it is crossing that bridge, and we'll try the video again. Definitely going faster here. So this is the next spot that I caught it at. I'll go back to the map and show you where I would have been. So they would have left St. Stephen, and you can see the track wiggling under the highway here. I think this is where I would have caught it the first time with the covered bridge, and then I would have been coming along 750 here, and I think that would have been somewhere along here at Moore's Mills. So you can see how the track parallels it in a lot of places. I think it would have been right here is where is this photo. Right at this location where it just kind of crosses at a very shallow angle. So I'll go back and look at the photo. So there it is approaching the crossing, and then a really in your face telephoto shot as they cross the crossing. And then a more wide angle shot as they come through the crossing. The sky was kind of overcast for most of the time, which was okay for taking pictures because then you could shoot from pretty much any angle. But you can see the sun was trying to come out at points. All right, so here's a really long distance shot of the train from a crossing, and that probably would be here, I would say. That would be the next one. You can see how it's a straight track all a long way, so I'm sure it was right there. So there's a really long distance, and then cropped in and telephoto exaggerated to show the track again. It's pretty blurry because of the heat blur from such a distance, but I do like the long telephoto shots. And here they are coming at the crossing. The next location I photographed them at was at Honeydale. This is an old grocery store in Honeydale. I'll show you on the map where Honeydale is. Right there. So you can see the track comes pretty near it and then goes off in the wilderness for a while. So I photographed them at Honeydale. Not a great photograph. And then the next place I caught them at was Watt Junction. So we'll talk about Watt Junction. You see how the track kind of goes in the middle of nowhere for a little while and then comes here to Watt Junction. So it's the reason why it's called Watt Junction is because the branch line used to branch off here and also go to St. Andrews, New Brunswick. St. Andrews is a pretty well-known location in New Brunswick. It is the location of it was actually the origin of the first railway in New Brunswick, and it's well known for the Algonquin Hotel and for being a great tourist area. I've been there a number of times with my family, and it's a beautiful place to visit. You should definitely visit St. Andrews if you're in New Brunswick. If you zoom in here, what you'll see is, you see the dotted line here. That is the walking trail. It is used to be the railway track, and that would go all the way down to St. Andrews here. It used to go down along the peninsula through Bayside and so on, but it doesn't anymore. But anyways, the railway track does go here to Watt Junction. There's a small yard in Watt Junction for whatever reason, I guess still for maintenance storage more than anything, and then the line continues. From Watt Junction, it comes through Lawrence Station, which is crossing the highway, and then it basically goes in the wilderness to Macadam. So that's pretty much the last place you can pick it up. So Watt Junction. Here it is. They're coming around the bend in Watt Junction, and here I took some video. So you can see there's a siding with some stored railway rails and other equipment there. A little rocking and rolling with the engine as it comes through. That URL at the bottom there is, I don't think it works anymore. It might still work, but it redirects to traingeek.ca. That's my old address before I got my own domain name. So there they are coming through Watt Junction and leaving. So you remember there was a dog there too. Yeah, there was a pretty friendly dog in the area. So got them there, and then I went to Macadam to wait for them to show up. And here they are coming into Macadam. So in Macadam there is a Y, W-Y-E, that is a, I'll show you what it looks like when you get to Macadam. So this is the Y. Basically it makes a Y shape. And so they came in here and in around to this train station here. So here they are coming in from the St. Stephen subdivision and around the bend and coming in towards the train station. So a number of things to notice here in the yard in Macadam. There's a few old carts that would have been towed behind speeders that were still hanging around at the time. This old boxcar was used for storage here on the left edge of the photo. And here they are coming in. There's my son. He was my companion on this trip and having a good time, touching my scanner there, and so yeah, he was a real good traveling companion. there they are pulling up beside the historic Macadam train station. That is a beautiful station. If you are ever in the area, you definitely need to visit Macadam train station. It has been lovingly restored inside. They have a lot of local functions in the dining room inside, and the lunch counter has been restored. And it's just a beautiful, it's a gem for the area, and you should definitely visit it. And there's a bigger view of the train station. And so what they did when they arrived at Macadam was they basically dropped their train, shoved it back in the yard, and then they went to switch the gypsum facility, which is on the Y, and not accessible to the public. So that was when I left off. So here they are; they're pushing back and going into the gypsum facility. And just as a follow-up, like a week later, I saw 9801 again. This time they were pulling the excursion train. This is in Wellsford, New Brunswick, and that's a story for another time. So thank you very much for watching and listening. I appreciate your time. Please like and comment, and I'm going to include links to the videos that I showed here in case you'd like to view them directly on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and come Railfan with me another time.